चार्ट आसो ताते जिबे एटा को ऑन करबे पेजटा को ऑन करके एटा स्टॉप स्ट्रीमिंग करबे
सॉरी कोड जिबे
ए जो ओपीएस अछि जदि चाहे सेटा भी ऑन न होला चलबो किंतु पिला यदि आंसर देबे ना तो एटा देखिबार अछि एटा इतना देखे भी किछ नहीं मैं देखि
ठीक अछि आउ
पिला चार्ट करबे और एटा ऑन करके एटा देखि दे एटा ऑन करके एटा मतलब ऊपर देखो भी आसीबे
हेलो 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 आसन हाँ ऑन तो अच्छे हेलो आसी हेलो So, welcome all of you. So, prelims exam is going to be held on 12th of October. So, we have prepared most expected questions for the upcoming exam. So, So, without further ado, let's move on to discuss our questions. So, before we discuss our questions, see actually आमर गोटे super 30 afternoon batch आमे आरंभ करिया को जाउछु from 9th of October. जो कि आपण there are highly experienced faculties and study materials आपण को मिलिबो. So, limited number of seats अच्छी, for example like 30 students in a batch and online offline classes रहिबो, smart classroom and personal mentorship भी दिया हबो. हेलो fine then okay see आरंभ batch prepare for OAS after +2 जदि +2 पर जदि के आपण माने भितर जदि के +2 पर सिविल सर्विसेज में प्रिपेयर करिया को चाहउचंती ताहले भी आमे गोटे प्रोग्राम आरंभ करछु जोडा कि आरंभ बैच हेलो सो आपण मान चाहिले कांटेक्ट करी जॉइन करि परिबे. फाइन now let's come to our session. So let us discuss now. So the first question is, which one of the following activities of Reserve Bank of India is considered to be part of sterilization? Which one of the following activities of Reserve Bank of India is considered to be part of sterilization? That the answer is A. Answer is A, that is conducting open market operations. Conducting open market operations. So, देखो sterilization. What do you mean by sterilization? आपको बुझिया पड़ियो. What do you mean by sterilization? See, sterilization. देखो आपण माने जानि थिबे जे फॉरेन कंपनीज माने जतले इंडिया को आसंती, फॉरेन कंपनीज माने जतले इंडिया को आसंती इन्वेस्ट करिवा पई से माने डॉलर्स नै कि आसंती. डॉलर्स को यूज करिके से माने इंडिया रे यूज करिके से माने इन्वेस्ट करि परिबे नाही. तो तांको कोन करिया पड़ियो, डॉलर्स को रुपी रे कन्वर्ट करिवा को पड़ियो. फॉर एग्जांपल गोटे फॉरेन कंपनी $1 बिलियन इन्वेस्ट करिवा को चाहूची इंडियन इकोनॉमी रे. से डॉलर्स को इन्वेस्ट तो करि परिबोनी. तो $1 बिलियन को प्रथमे आपन को रुपी रे कन्वर्ट करिवा को पड़ियो. सो $1 बिलियन फॉर एग्जांपल लेट्स से if you convert $1 बिलियन into rupees, let's say होची केते $8,500 होची. $8,500, 8,500 rupees, 500 crores. So if you convert $1 billion, it amounts to 8,500 crore rupees. Okay. तो वर्तमान इकोनॉमी रे incidentally 8,500 crore rupees enter kala, which was not the intention of RBI. RBI intentionally money supply increase करिनी इकोनॉमी रे, किंतु गोटे फॉरेन कंपनी इंडिया को आसिकी इन्वेस्ट करिबा जोगु incidentally money supply इकोनॉमी रे बढ़ी जाइछि. जेतबेले money supply इकोनॉमी रे बढ़िबो, it might cause inflation. It might cause inflation. So it might lead to inflationary pressures in the economy. So in order to check the rising rate of inflation, what RBI does is RBI use a monetary policy tool called as sterilization. तो RBI कौन करिवो, ओपन मार्केट रे गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड्स को, ओपन मार्केट रे गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड्स को सेल करिकी सेई जो एडिशनल मनी सप्लाई एंटर करिछि इकोनॉमी रे ताकू एब्जॉर्ब करनबो, जहा द्वारा कि कोन लोकन हाथ को वर्तमान से पैसाटा जीवनी, जहा द्वारा कि डिमांड बढ़िबनी एंड इन्फ्लेशन विल रिमेन विद इन द कंट्रोल. दिस इज कॉल्ड स्टेरिलाइजेशन. सो sterilization is a part of open market operations. Fine. Next question. Among the following financial markets, identify how many belong specifically to capital market which deals primarily with long term financial instruments. देखो फाइनेंशियल मार्केट को हमें दीटा मार्केट रे डिवाइड कर दे परिबा. फाइनेंशियल मार्केट को हमें दीटा मार्केट रे डिवाइड कर दे परिबा. ओके, फाइनेंशियल मार्केट को हमें दीटा मार्केट रे डिवाइड कर दे परिबा. गोटे होची मनी मार्केट, गोटे होची कैपिटल मार्केट. मनी मार्केट डील्स विथ शॉर्ट टर्म फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स. मनी मार्केट डील्स विथ शॉर्ट टर्म फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स. शॉर्ट टर्म मीन्स लेस देन 1 year. And capital market deals with long term financial instruments, meaning more than 1 year. Okay, more than 1 year. So it question pacharchi, among the following financial markets, identify how many belong specifically to the capital market which deals primarily with long term financial instruments. ये जो चारिटा ऑप्शन दिया है, ये चारिटा ऑप्शन भितरु को ऑप्शन कैपिटल मार्केट रे एक्चुअली डील हुए. So the question is, first is government bonds market, bond market, call money market, treasury bill market and stock market. See, out of these 4 options, the call money market and treasury bill market, these are the instruments. Call money market and treasury bill market, these are the instruments which are traded, which deals in money market, which are traded in money market because they are short term financial instruments. Whereas government bond market and stock market, they deal in capital market because they are long term financial instruments. एबे आपण जानथिबे गवर्नमेंट रो लॉन्ग टर्म गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड्स को कोन कुहा जाय, डेटेड सिक्योरिटीज कुहा जाय. सो डेटेड सिक्योरिटीज आर द long term government bonds whose duration is more than 1 year. So they are traded in the capital market. And similarly stock market रे भी long term actually financial instruments are bought and sold in the stock market. Fine. So the correct option is 1 and 4. 1 and 4. These are 1 and 4. These are the 2 options which are actually traded in the capital market. Now third, with reference to the sectors of Indian economy, consider the following pairs. See, Indian economy, storage it दिया है, Indian economic activity दिया है, आउ sectors दिया है. हमको कहिबार अछि को economic activity टा को sector को belong करूछि. हेलो, which economic activity is part of which sector. So storage of agricultural produce is a part of secondary sector. हमर तीनटा sectors अछि, आपण मन जानिथिबे तीनटा sectors अछि, primary, secondary and tertiary. So which economic activity is part of which sector we need to find out. Storage of agricultural produce दिया है, it is a part of secondary sector. Actually false. Storage of agricultural produce is a part of tertiary sector because storage facilities, they are providing a service. So service belong to tertiary sector. So first option is wrong. So storage of agricultural produce, it's a part of tertiary sector, not secondary sector. Dairy farm is a part of primary sector, which is true. Then mineral exploration is a part of tertiary sector, again false. Mineral exploration is a part of primary sector. Okay, so first one is false, third one is false. Now fourth one is weaving cloth is a part of secondary sector, which is right. So the correct answer is with reference to the sectors of the Indian economy, consider the following pairs. So out of these four pairs, which pairs are right? The second one is right and the fourth one is right. Dairy farm belongs to primary sector, weaving cloth belongs to secondary sector. So second and fourth options are correct. So 2 and 4 are correct. Whereas storage of agricultural produce, it belongs to tertiary sector, and mineral exploration, it belongs to primary sector. So 1 and 3 are wrong. Okay. Now the fourth question, what was the main objective of the 12th 5-year plan? What was the main objective of the 12th 5-year plan? The objective of the 12th 5-year plan was faster, sustainable and more inclusive growth. This was the objective, faster, sustainable and more inclusive growth. Now, which report is the official source of unemployment data in India? Which report is the official source of unemployment data in India? The correct answer is National Sample Survey Organization's periodic labor force survey. जब अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट को मेजर करा होची इंडिया रे तो डेटा को सर्वे को यूज करिकी डेटा कलेक्ट करा जाए, को सर्वे को कंडक्ट करिकी डेटा कलेक्शन करा जाए, that survey is called as periodic labor force survey. This periodic labor force survey is conducted to collect data with respect to unemployment in India. Okay, देखो एटी गोटे पॉइंट जानी थांतु जो पीरियोडिक लेबर फोर्स सर्वे एक्चुअली एटा आरंभ हैला इंडिया रे फ्रॉम 2017-18 फ्रॉम 2017 ऑनवर्ड्स इन इंडिया वी इंट्रोड्यूस दिस पीरियोडिक लेबर फोर्स सर्वे. या पूर्वरु कोन होतला, या पूर्वरु गोटे सर्वे कंडक्ट करा होतला जार ना थिला एम्प्लॉयमेंट एंड अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट सर्वे. द नेम ऑफ द सर्वे वाज एम्प्लॉयमेंट एंड अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट सर्वे. This employment and unemployment survey was a quinquennial survey. Quinquennial means every 5 years, 5 वर्ष को थरे कंडक्ट करा होतला. That was employment unemployment survey. किंतु 2017 रे unemployment regarding data को कलेक्ट करिवा पई इंडिया रे इंट्रोड्यूस हला periodic labor force survey. So as of now we actually collect data with respect to unemployment by conducting a survey called as periodic labor force survey. या पूर्वरु गोटे सर्वे होतला जार ना थिला employment unemployment survey and that survey was quinquennial survey. Okay. Now which type of unemployment exists due to mismatch of skills? Which type of unemployment exists due to mismatch of skills? The answer is structural. Structural unemployment exists due to mismatch of skills. See, structural unemployment बुझिबा को हेले आपन टिके structural unemployment बुझिया देखंतु. What do you mean by structural unemployment? Let me explain it bit further. Structural unemployment. See, every economy is standing upon some economic structure. Every economy is standing upon some economic structure. For example, American economy is standing upon the structure of research and development. Chinese economy is standing upon the structure of manufacturing, whereas Indian economy with respect to contribution to GDP is standing upon the structure of services, whereas with respect to number of people engaged or number of people working, the Indian economy is standing upon the structure of agriculture. That means out of the entire workforce, near about 45% of the workforce is engaged in agriculture. So with respect to occupation, our Indian economy is standing upon the structure of agriculture, whereas with respect to contribution to GDP, our economy is standing upon the structure of services. Now, what do you mean by this structural unemployment? देखो एटी गोटे पॉइंट बुझंतु समस्ते. देखो आजिका डेट रे आमे चाइना को कहू जे चाइना इज द वर्ल्ड्स मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब. चाइना इज द वर्ल्ड्स फैक्ट्री और मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब बोली कहू. सेटा आज किंतु आपण जदि 50-60s को पळेबे एट दैट टाइम अमेरिका वाज द मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब और वर्ल्ड्स फैक्ट्री कुहाउतला अमेरिका कुहाउतला वर्ल्ड्स मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब और आपण कहि परे अमेरिका कुहाउतला वर्ल्ड्स फैक्ट्री जोड़ा कि आज कुहाउ चाइना को कुहाउ वर्ल्ड्स फैक्ट्री 1950-60s रे अमेरिकन इकोनॉमी कुहाउतला वर्ल्ड्स फैक्ट्री बोली कुहाउतला किंतु हला कोन धीरे धीरे अमेरिका रे लेबर कॉस्ट धीरे धीरे बढ़िबा आरंभ हला अमेरिका रे लेबर कॉस्ट धीरे धीरे बढ़िबा आरंभ हला तो लेबर कॉस्ट बढ़िबा जोगु लेबर कॉस्ट हाई थिला अमेरिका रे तापरे टैक्स रेट्स भी बहुत हाई थिला तो सेति पई कोन होतला जो प्रोड्यूसर्स माने थिले जो कैपिटलिस्ट माने थिले सेमानकर प्रॉफिट मार्जिन ता धीरे धीरे कमिबा आरंभ हला तो सेति पई से कोन करले अल्टरनेटिव डेस्टिनेशंस खोजले जोठी की समान जोठू सेमाने चीप लेबर भी पाई परिवे आउ जोठी सेमानकर जोठू सेमाने चीप लेबर पाइबे आउ टैक्स रेट्स भी कम थिबो तो तांकु अल्टरनेटिव डेस्टिनेशन मिलला चाइना तो सेति पई अमेरिकन कंपनीज माने कोन करले तांकर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग बेस्ड जोटा अमेरिका रे थिला से बेस्ड को सेमाने शिफ्ट कर देले कोठी को चाइना को सो द मैन्युफैक्चरिंग बेस वाज शिफ्टेड फ्रॉम अमेरिका टू चाइना कहना चाइना रे लेबर कॉस्ट भी बहुत कम थिला लेबर कॉस्ट लेबर वाज वेरी चीप एंड आउ टैक्स रेट्स भी बहुत कम थिला कंपेयर टू अमेरिकन इकोनॉमी तो सेति पई कोन हला मैन्युफैक्चरिंग बेस वाज शिफ्टेड फ्रॉम अमेरिकन इकोनॉमी टू चाइनीज इकोनॉमी तो अमेरिका रे वर्तमान अमेरिका रे प्रायर टू दिस चेंज प्रायर टू दिस शिफ्ट अमेरिका रे जो वर्कर्स माने थिले जो माने फैक्ट्रीज रे काम करथुले मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर रे काम करथुले दे हैड ओनली मैन्युफैक्चरिंग स्किल्स से मान पाखरे जो स्किल थिला से स्किलटा थिला मैन्युफैक्चरिंग स्किल्स तो जेहेतु वर्तमान मैन्युफैक्चरिंग बेसटा वर्तमान शिफ्ट हे गला तो वर्तमान कोन हला वर्तमान मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टरटा शिफ्ट हे गला कोठी को चाइना को अमेरिका रे वर्तमान गोटे न्यू स्ट्रक्चर डेवलप हवा आरंभ हला the structure previously was manufacturing however since the structure of manufacturing was shifted to China a new structure started developing in American economy called as research development and innovation sector तो जो लोक माने आगुरु मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर रे एम्प्लॉयड थिले से माने ऑल ऑफ ए सडन रिसर्च एंड तांकु सॉफ्ट स्किल्स डेवलप करबा को पड़िबो जदि सेमानकु निजको एम्प्लॉयड करिवार अछि ताले सेमानकु कोन करिया को पड़िबो सॉफ्ट स्किल डेवलप करिया को पड़िबो जोटा की दरकार को सेक्टर पई रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट एंड इनोवेशन सेक्टर पई दरकार तो जदि सेमान पाखरे वर्तमान दीटा ऑप्शन अछि जदि सेमान निजको एम्प्लॉयड रखिबा को चाहुचंती ताले तांक पाखरे दीटा ऑप्शन अछि either they can go to China either they can relocate themselves to China जदि सेमाने निजको चाइना को पळेबे ताहाले सेमान निजको एम्प्लॉयड कर दै परिबे किंबा सेमाने जदि न्यू स्किल्स डेवलप करि पारुचंती ताहाले भी सेमान निजको एम्प्लॉयड कर दै परिबे किंतु जदि सेमाने चाइना को रिलोकेट हो नाहंती किंबा सेमाने न्यू स्किल्स डेवलप करू नाहंती then they will remain unemployed which is called as structural unemployment तो रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट पई गुटे सेट ऑफ स्किल्स दरकार किंतु अमेरिकन जो लेबरर्स माने थिले तांको पाखरे गुटे सेट ऑफ स्किल्स थिला so this is called as mismatch of skills which is a part of structural unemployment so now next question the terms marginal standing facility rate net demand and time liabilities standing deposit facility rate are used in relation to which of the following options the terms marginal standing facility rate net demand NDTL and standing deposit facility rate are used in relation to banking operations now what do you mean by देखो briefly मु कहि दोची what do you mean marginal standing facility rate MSF rate marginal standing repo rate समस्त जानि थिबे what is repo rate is the rate at which banks borrow from RBI जो rate रे banks माने RBI टू पैसा borrow करंती से रेट होची repo rate then what is MSF rate marginal standing facility rate is the penal rate of interest at which banks borrow from RBI marginal MSF rate is usually 0.25% 25 basis points higher than the repo rate hello this is your marginal standing facility rate and what do you mean by net demand and time liabilities net demand and time liabilities simply refers to public deposits गोटे बैंक रे देखंतु गोटे बैंक रे पब्लिक भी तांको पैसा डिपॉजिट करंती अन्य बैंक्स भी तांको पैसा डिपॉजिट करंती गोटे बैंक सपोज गोटे बैंक अछि SBI सपोज SBI रे पब्लिक डिपॉजिट करला 100 crores आउ सपोज गोटे अन्य बैंक सपोज नहीं जानतो कानारा बैंक डिपॉजिट कला 10 crores ताल टोटल डिपॉजिट्स केते टोटल डिपॉजिट्स होउची 110 crores 110 crores भितरु पब्लिक डिपॉजिट्स केते पब्लिक डिपॉजिट्स होउची 100 crores that public deposits simply refers to net demand and time liabilities hello now standing deposit facility rate the standing deposit facility rate is similar to reverse repo rate but with a little bit of difference well eta hochi the answer hochi kono banking operations the answer is banking operations now next question which of the following organizations publish the world economic outlook को किए publish करे which of the following international institutions publish the world economic outlook को publish करे किए international monetary fund international IMF publish the world economic outlook देखो या apart from world economic outlook there are many other reports which are published by this IMF देखो world economic outlook को publish किए करूची international IMF publish करूची apart from world economic outlook IMF also publish global financial stability report fiscal monitor report regional economic outlook and external sector report हला एति की मन रखिथिबे okay now next question a decrease in tax to GDP ratio of a country indicates which of the following a decrease in the tax to GDP ratio of a country indicates which of the following the first one is lower government capacity for public spending and narrow tax base which of the following are correct a decrease in the tax to GDP ratio what is tax to GDP ratio is the amount of tax collected to the size of the economy suppose India's GDP is 100 rupees India's GDP होउची 100 टंका तो tax collection होउची 30 rupees India's GDP size होउची 100 rupees and tax collection केते होउची 30 rupees so what is GDP ratio what is tax to GDP ratio is 30% well tax to GDP ratio 30% if the tax collection is 40 rupees then tax to GDP ratio is 40% so if tax to GDP ratio is declining then it indicates what lower government spending lower government capacity for public spending ताले जदि tax to GDP ratio कमुची ता माने गवर्नमेंट वर्तमान कम tax collect करूची आउ कम tax collect करिवा जगु गवर्नमेंट रो कैपेसिटी पब्लिक स्पेंडिंग रो कैपेसिटी भी कमुची ता सहित कोन and also tax to GDP ratio kahin kamuchi because of narrow tax base hello narrow tax base now next question which of the following is a liquidity adjustment mechanism used by RBI to control short term liquidity in the banking system which of the following please read this question is quite important which of the following is the liquidity adjustment mechanism used by RBI to control short term liquidity in the banking system शॉर्ट टर्म लिक्विडिटी को एडजस्ट करिबा पई आरबीआई को मैकेनिज्म को यूज करे ओपन मार्केट ऑपरेशंस मैकेनिज्म कैश रिजर्व रेशियो मैकेनिज्म लिक्विडिटी एडजस्टमेंट फैसिलिटी मैकेनिज्म और फाइनली यू हैव मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी कमिटी व्हिच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग आर करेक्ट सी द करेक्ट आंसर इज सी लिक्विडिटी एडजस्टमेंट फैसिलिटी The correct answer is liquidity adjustment facility. देखो which a question कौन पचारची which of the following is a liquidity adjustment mechanism used by RBI to control short term liquidity को adjust करिबा पई short term liquidity mismatch को adjust करिबा पई को mechanism को RBI use करे तो short term liquidity को adjust करिबा पई the mechanism used by RBI is liquidity adjustment facility तले आपण पचारि परिबे जे open market operations mechanism is also used by RBI to manage what to manage liquidity adjustment facility is used by the RBI to manage liquidity adjustment also open market operations is used by RBI to manage liquidity adjustment then what is the difference the difference is liquidity adjustment facility is used by RBI to control short term liquidity mismatch in the system whereas open market operations is used by RBI to manage medium and long term liquidity mismatch in the system open market operations को use करा जाए for medium and long term liquidity mismatch in the system whereas liquidity adjustment facility को use करा जाए to control short term liquidity mismatch in the system. Hello, so the correct answer is C. The correct answer is C. Now next question, the repo rate decided by RBI influences which of the following economic indicators primarily? The repo rate decided by the RBI influences which of the following economic indicators primarily? Primarily repo rate कहाँ को influence करे? Foreign exchange reserves, inflation and economic growth, government fiscal deficit, export and import balance. कहाँ को actually influence करे? देखो the repo rate, actually the correct option, the correct answer is B, inflation and economic growth. Inflation and economic growth. The repo rate decided by RBI influences inflation and economic growth directly. It's not that the repo rate decided by the RBI doesn't influence foreign exchange reserve. It does influence foreign exchange reserve. It does influence government's fiscal deficit, and it also does influence export and import balance. But the repo rate decided by RBI influence directly inflation and economic growth, whereas it influence indirectly foreign exchange reserves, government fiscal deficit, export and import balance. या कोई इन्फ्लेशन एंड इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ को डायरेक्टली इन्फ्लुएंस करे, यही सब जो बाकी गुडा ऑप्शंस अछि ताको इनडायरेक्टली इन्फ्लुएंस करे. how the repo rate actually influence inflation and economic growth directly? For example, suppose repo rate RBI कौन कला repo rate को, repo rate is also called as policy rate. So repo rate को increase कर दला RBI. So repo rate increase कर दला माने what will happen? The rate of interest will increase in the economy, the market rate of interest will increase. If policy rate is increased, if repo rate is increased, the rate of the market rate of interest will also increase. And when it will increase, people will stop taking loans. People will stop taking loans because of high rate of interest in the economy. So since people are taking less loans, the demand in the economy will reduce, and as a result of which the inflation will be controlled. Hello, inflation को control करिवा पाएं. Repo rate is increased. Okay. And if RBI wants to promote economic growth, then the policy rate or repo rate will be decreased, as a result of which the market rate of interest will be reduced. Then people will take more and more loans, since loans are available at a very less rate of interest, as a result of which demand will increase. When demand increases, what will happen? Production will increase, employment will increase, income will increase, and finally economic growth will be achieved. So the correct answer is inflation and economic growth. Now next question, what is base rate in the context of Indian banking system regulated by RBI? What is base rate in the context of Indian banking system regulated by RBI? Base rate. What is the base rate? Base rate means, see, base rate is the benchmark rate. The correct option is B. Base rate is the benchmark rate below which banks cannot lend to their customers. Banks cannot lend to their customers. बेस रेट होची द फ्लोर रेट. बेस रेट को फ्लोर रेट भी कहा जाए. सो बेस रेट को फ्लोर रेट भी कहा जाए किंबा बेंचमार्क रेट भी कहा जाए, बिलो व्हिच बैंक्स कैन नॉट लेंड टू देयर कस्टमर्स. बैंक्स माने जो लोन दियन तां कस्टमर्स माननको ता जो बेस रेट तळु को से माने तांकुटू इंटरेस्ट चार्ज करि परिबे नाही. दिस इज द बेस रेट. द बेस रेट इज द बेंचमार्क रेट. बेस रेट इज द बेंचमार्क रेट below which banks cannot lend to their customers. Okay, so next question. Okay, now which of the following statements about the capital account in India's balance of payment are correct? Which of the following statements about the capital account in India's balance of payments are correct? It includes capital account under balance of payment. Capital account under balance of payment includes foreign direct investment inflows, right or wrong? It records changes in foreign exchange reserves held by RBI. It encompasses loans and portfolio investment flows. So out of these three options, which are correct? Dekho, capital account, balance of payment. Under balance of payment, there are two accounts. Under balance of payment, there are two accounts. One is your current account, another is your capital account. Current account consists of those transactions which are settled in nature. Current account consists of those transactions which are settled in nature, whereas capital account consists of those transactions which are unsettled in nature. Now, out of these three options, which options are part of current capital account? See, it includes foreign direct investment inflows. Yes, correct. Capital account, foreign direct investment inflows, they are unsettled in nature. Since they are unsettled in nature, they are part of capital account. Now, it records changes in foreign exchange reserves held by RBI. It's wrong. Foreign exchange reserves held by RBI, that doesn't come under capital account. It is a separate account जहाँ कुआ जाए फॉरेक्स रिजर्व अकाउंट है जदि आम टेक्निकली कहवा जब आप बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट केवल दुईटा अकाउंट ही देखिए गोटे हूँ करंट अकाउंट गोटे कैपिटल अकाउंट ताकू छाड़देले गोटे थर्ड अकाउंट भी अच्छी जहाँ कुआ जाए फॉरेक्स रिजर्व अकाउंट है फॉरेक्स रिजर्व अकाउंट सो इट जो दिया इट रेकॉर्ड्स चेंजेस इन फॉरेक्स एक्सचेंज रिजर्व्स हेल्ड बाय आरबीआई एटा होची थर्ड अकाउंट दिस इज पार्ट ऑफ थर्ड अकाउंट दैट इज कॉल्ड फॉरेक्स रिजर्व अकाउंट पार्ट इट इज नॉट पार्ट ऑफ कैपिटल अकाउंट सो फर्स्ट वन इज पार्ट ऑफ कैपिटल अकाउंट second one is not part of capital account wrong and it encompasses loans and portfolio investment flows this also third option is also right so the correct option is 1 and 3 that is B correct option is B 1 and 3 only okay now next question how might a persistent current account deficit impact an emerging economy like India like India. How might a persistent current account deficit impact an emerging economy like India? What do you mean by current account deficit? Current account deficit means if the export and if the exports or the import of goods and services more, if import of goods and services is more than the export of goods and services, then we experience a deficit. We face a deficit called as current account deficit. So, how might a persistent current account deficit impact an emerging economy like India? It leads to automatic currency appreciation through capital inflows. Wrong. It can increase external vulnerabilities due to dependence on foreign capital. Yes, this is correct. The correct option is B. Okay. It reduces the need for foreign exchange reserves. No, it increases the need for foreign exchange reserves and it leads to higher import substitution industries. Long run this strategy might work in the long run, but in the short run this strategy might not work. So the correct option is it can increase external vulnerabilities due to dependence on foreign capital. Okay. Now, next question: which of the following would not be considered a part of India's invisible trade in the balance of payment? Which of the following would not be considered a part of India's invisible trade in the balance of payment? देखो तो बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट अंडर दुईटा अकाउंट अच्छी ऑलरेडी मुझे कही करंट अकाउंट एंड कैपिटल अकाउंट सो करंट अकाउंट अंडर रे आपनकर अच्छी कोन visibles and invisibles export and import of visibles and export and inflows and outflows of invisibles invisibles under kon kon asibo services asibo and inflow and outflow of transfer payments and inflow and outflow of investment income they are the part of current account. So it which of the following would not be considered a part of India's invisible trade? Remittances from Indians working abroad, yes, it's a part of invisibles. It's a part of invisible. Why? Because remittances are part of transfer payments. Export of software services, yes, again a part of India's invisible trade. Earnings from foreign direct investment inflows, it's a part of capital account. It's wrong. And income from tourism is a service. So income from tourism will also be a part of India's invisible trade. So the correct option is A, B and D. Okay, the correct option is A, B and D. Fine. A, B and D are correct. C, earnings from foreign FDI, that will be part of India's what? Capital account. That will be part of capital account. Now, next question. Consider the following effects due to depreciation of Indian rupee. Consider the following effects due to depreciation of Indian rupee. Depreciation depreciation means fall in the value of rupee against a foreign currency. Fall in the value of rupee against a foreign currency. So depreciation, whenever depreciation of rupee happens, so what might it lead to? So adverse impact on inflation in the short term. See, the first option is it might lead to adverse impact on inflation in the short term, improved global competitiveness of exports, reduced cost of servicing external debt. Which of the following statements are correct? जेतेबेले rupee depreciate करी जाए against a foreign currency, whenever the value of rupee depreciates against a foreign currency, then what might happen? It might lead to adverse impact on inflation in the short term. Yes, correct. कहीं ना जदि जेतेबेले rupee depreciate हो जाए तो imports कौन है वे imports costly हो जाए. तो suppose हमरो आपण मन जानी थे India's imports are inelastic in nature. India's imports are bit inelastic in nature. तामने जदि आपण जानी थे लॉ ऑफ डिमांड जानी थे प्राइस बढ़िले हमें क्वांटिटी कम डिमांड करूँ प्राइस कमिले आम क्वांटिटी बेसी डिमांड करूँ तो जिते इंपोर्ट कॉस्टा बढ़ी जाए तो एज पर लॉ ऑफ डिमांड जिते इंपोर्ट कॉस्ट बढ़ी जाऊँगी डिमांड कमी जावा कथा किंतु इंडिया केस रे इंडिया गोटे पिक्युलर केस अच्छी इंडिया इंपोर्ट्स आर इनलास्टिक तामाने इंपोर्ट कॉस्ट बढ़िले भी आमे इंपोर्ट को कमे पारिबानी बिकॉज व्हाई बिकॉज आमे जहाँ जहाँ इंपोर्ट करूँ दे आर वेरी एसेंशियल दे आर क्वाइट एसेंशियल गुड्स मतलब फॉर एग्जांपल क्रूड ऑयल होगला क्रूड ऑयल को आमे चाहिए भी आमे इंपोर्ट तार कमे पारिबा नाही ओके सो इंडिया इंपोर्ट नियर अबाउट 85% ऑफ इट्स क्रूड ऑयल फ्रॉम आउटसाइड फ्रॉम एक्सटर्नल सोर्सेस तो जेहेतु आमे इंपोर्ट कॉस्ट बढ़िले भी जेहेतु आमे इंपोर्ट कॉस्ट बढ़िले भी आमे इंपोर्ट्स कमे पारिबानी सेति आपन को हाई प्राइस रे ही हाई कॉस्ट रे ही आपन को इंपोर्ट करिया पड़िबो जदि आपन हाई प्राइस रे इंपोर्ट करूचंती ताल डोमेस्टिक इकोनॉमी रे हाई प्राइस रे ही बिकिवा पड़िबो सो इट विल लीड टू व्हाट इन्फ्लेशन इट विल लीड टू इन्फ्लेशन सो depreciation of Indian rupee will have an adverse impact on inflation in the short term correct option correct second improved global competitiveness of exports जेतले रुपी डेप्रिशिएट करी जाए एक्सपोर्ट्स बेसी एक्सपोर्ट्स हमर इंडियन एक्सपोर्ट्स might become competitive in the foreign market why because exports become cheaper whereas imports become costlier because of depreciation of Indian rupee reduced cost of servicing external debt this is wrong जेतले रुपी डेप्रिशिएट कर जाए it will increase the cost of servicing external debt what do you mean by this cost of servicing external debt ता माने सपोज गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया हो इंडियन गवर्नमेंट हो किंबा प्राइवेट कंपनीज माने हो फॉरेन मार्केट रु फॉरेन सोर्सेस रु केमान समान लोन नहीं चंद जदि सपोज धर नियंतु इंडियन गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया अमेरिका रु लोन अमेरिकन गवर्नमेंट लोन नहीं छि किंबा इंडियन प्राइवेट कंपनीज माने अमेरिकन मार्केट रु लोन नहीं चंदी तो सेमान डॉलर्स रे ही नहीं थिबे फॉर एग्जांपल सेमान $1 लोन नहीं चंदी सपोज इंडियन कंपनीज माने $1 लोन नहीं चंदी जदि लोन नहीं थिले सेतबेले एक्सचेंज रेट थिला केते 85 रुपीस थिला एक्सचेंज रेट तो से माने $1 लोन नेले से $1 को 85 रुपीस रे कन्वर्ट करले इंडिया रे तापर से 85 रुपीस को इन्वेस्ट करले इंडिया रे किन जेतबेले तांकू सेई $1 जेतबेले रीपे करिवार समय आसीबो किंतु सेतबेले कोन जदी रुपी डेप्रिशिएट करि जाइथिबो फॉर एग्जांपल थिला $1 को 85 रुपीस वर्तमान हे जाइछि $1 = 90 रुपीस तो वर्तमान तांकू $1 पाइबा पई $1 किनिबा पई वर्तमान दबा पड़ियो केते 90 रुपीस किंतु सेतबेले से माने $1 देई कि केतमा पाइथिले 85 रुपीस सो डेप्रिसिएशन ऑफ इंडियन रुपी एक्चुअली increases the cost of servicing external debt okay this statement is wrong so only the first and second statements are correct that is 1 and 2 only are correct hello next question which of the following is true regarding India's strategy of currency internationalization which of the following is true regarding India's strategy of currency internationalization currency internationalization apan janithibe we have 5 major international currencies for example dollar American dollars and euro and Japanese renminbi Chinese renminbi Japanese yen and your pound sterling you know UK's pound sterling these are the 5 major international currencies इंटरनेशनल करेन्सी माने कोन इंटरनेशनल करेन्सी माने होउची जो कंट्रीज माने परस्पर सहित ट्रेड करिवा पई तांकू गुटे मीडियम ऑफ एक्सचेंज दरकार तो जो करेन्सी को कंट्रीज माने यूज करी की से माने परस्पर सहित ट्रेड करिवा को ट्रेड करि परिबे दैट करेन्सी बिकम्स इंटरनेशनल करेन्सी फॉर एग्जांपल डॉलर तो डॉलर को यूज करके कंट्रीज माने परस्पर सहित ट्रेड करने को राजी अच्छा सो डॉलर बिकम्स एन इंटरनेशनल करेन्सी सिमिलरली चाइनीज रेनमी को भी यूज करके कंट्रीज माने परस्पर सहित ट्रेड करने को राजी अच्छा सो चाइनीज रेनमी हैज आल्सो बिकम एन इंटरनेशनल करेन्सी सिमिलरली जापानीज येन यूरो एंड यूकेस पाउंड स्टर्लिंग सो करेन्सी with respect to currency strategy of currency internationalization which of the following are true it primarily aims at increasing the share of Indian rupee in global reserves and trade settlements first second it mandates all foreign trade transactions to be settled in Indian rupee this is B wrong statement B is your wrong India never mandates all foreign trade transactions to be settled in Indian rupee third statement is it restricts foreign exchange conversion involving Indian rupee India no as of today India doesn't restrict foreign exchange conversion it actually promotes foreign exchange conversion involving Indian rupee it doesn't restrict and it reduces the role of RBI in managing forex reserves no it doesn't true it's not right the correct option is A it primarily aims at increasing the share of Indian rupee in global reserves and trade settlements ट्रेड सेटलमेंट तामाने इंडिया चाहूची जे बेसी रु बेसी कंट्रीज माने इंडियन रुपी को यूज करके परस्पर सहित ट्रेड करंतु इंडिया चाहूची किंतु इंडिया मैंडेट करि परिबन कंपलसरी करि परिबन काको बाध्य करि परिबन हेलो सो इंडिया इज ट्राइंग टू प्रमोट international rupee internationalization. Okay, next question. The poverty gap index primarily captures which aspect of poverty? The poverty gap index primarily captures which aspect of poverty? The persons option A is the percentage of people who are poor, the percentage of people who are poor. B, the average shortfall of the poor's income from the poverty line, the severity of poverty emphasizing extreme deprivation, and the number of people moving in and out of poverty. So out of this the correct option is your B. The average poverty gap index primarily captures the average shortfall of the poor's income from the poverty line. या माने कौन actually देखो the first option जो दिया है the percentage of people who are poor, it is simply called as head count ratio. Head count ratio simply tells us the percentage of people who are below the poverty line or who are poor, that is head count ratio. And the number of people moving in and out of poverty, that is simply called as churning poverty. Churning, CHURNING, churning poverty. The number of people moving in and out of poverty, simply called as churning poverty. The percentage of people who are poor, that is called as head count ratio. Whereas the average shortfall of the poor's income from the poverty line is called poverty gap. And the severity of poverty emphasizing extreme deprivation is captured, is measured. This extreme deprivation is measured by poverty severity index. Hello. So poverty gap index कौन measure करें? It measures average shortfall of the poor's income from the poverty line. Poverty gap index कौन? I hope समझ जानी थी बे. Okay. Now let's come to the next question. Which agency is the nodal agency responsible for monitoring the multidimensional poverty index in India? Which agency is the nodal agency responsible for monitoring the multidimensional poverty index in India? That is your Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog is the nodal agency responsible for monitoring the multidimensional poverty index in India. The Reserve Bank is the monetary authority of India which frame monetary policy, whereas Ministry of Finance, it takes care about budgeting and everything with respect to finances of the government, and Planning Commission has been replaced by Niti Aayog. So Niti Aayog is the nodal agency responsible for monitoring the multidimensional poverty index in India. The correct option is this B, Niti Aayog. Now next question. What distinguishes chronic poverty from transient poverty? What distinguishes chronic poverty from transient poverty? Transient poverty. Okay. See, chronic poverty lasts for a long duration and transient poverty is temporary. First option. Second, chronic poverty is income based while transient poverty relates to asset deprivation. Chronic poverty refers only to rural areas, transient poverty is urban. Chronic poverty is measured by consumption, transient poverty is measured by education. The correct option is this A. Correct option is A. Chronic poverty lasts for long duration and transient poverty is temporary. जो पोवर्टी सपोज गोटे फैमिली अच्छी गोटे पर्सन अच्छी जो पर्सन टा सपोज बहुत वर्ष होगला गरीब होगी अच्छी 30-40 वर्ष 50 वर्ष होगला दैट पर्सन हैज बीन पोर दैट मींस हमें कहबा जे दैट पर्सन इज अंडर chronic poverty. That person is suffering from chronic poverty. Chronic means long term. Chronic means long term. So that person is suffering from long term poverty, chronic poverty. Transient poverty means temporary poverty. Temporary. Suppose गोटे family अच्छी गोटे person अच्छी ताको suppose हठात ता देह खराब होगला तो ट्रीटमेंट में बहुत पैसा खर्च होगला तो बहुत पैसा खर्च हो जिबा जगु कोन होगला से टेम्पररी पीरियड पई that person has become poor. That person has is now for a temporary period of time that person is below the poverty line. Phone जतल तार income जतल बढ़िया आरंभ होबो से phone that person will come out of poverty. So transient poverty is temporary, whereas chronic poverty actually it's a long term poverty. Now next question. A factory worker loses his job because the manufacturing unit relocated to another country. This is an example of which unemployment? A factory worker loses his job because the manufacturing unit relocated to another country. This is an example of which unemployment? This is an example of structural unemployment. किस समय तोड़े हम बुझाउतली what do you mean by structural unemployment? Okay, this is refers to structural unemployment. Okay, structural unemployment. Next question. Disguised unemployment is most prevalent in which sector of Indian economy? disguised unemployment is most prevalent in which sector of the Indian economy? Disguised unemployment आपण जानिथिबे disguised unemployment means where the marginal productivity is zero, marginal productivity is very low or marginal productivity is zero, marginal productivity. So disguised unemployment is most prevalent or most rampant in agricultural sector. Agricultural sector रे आपण disguised unemployment को बेसी देखिया को पाइबा disguised unemployment. The correct option is B, agricultural sector, disguised unemployment. disguised unemployment माने कोन माने ता माने होची disguised unemployment माने होची देखले लागुथबो जे लोक माने काम करूचंती किंतु तांकर कंट्रीब्यूशन टू इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी इज जीरो, तांको मार्जिनल प्रोडक्टिविटी सिंपली जीरो मींस तांको कंट्रीब्यूशन टू इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी इज जीरो, से माने काम करूचंती किंतु तांको कंट्रीब्यूशन ता होची जीरो. हेलो सो नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, व्हिच सर्वे इज द प्राइमरी सोर्स ऑफ एम्प्लॉयमेंट एंड अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट डेटा इन इंडिया? इटा ऑलरेडी रिपीट ही क्वेश्चन टा. This is which survey is the primary source of employment and unemployment data in India? That is periodic labor force survey. Periodic labor force survey is the primary source of employment and unemployment data in India. Okay. Now, which scheme aims to enhance employability by providing skill training to youth in India? Which scheme aims to enhance employability by providing skill training to youth in India? That is your Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. The answer is Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana is your answer. Now, next question. Consider the following statements about the Gini coefficient. Gini coefficient. So, Gini coefficient measures income inequality in a population. A value closer to zero indicates perfect inequality, and a value closer to 1 indicates perfect equality. So out of these, which options are correct? Gini coefficient is a statistical measure. Gini coefficient is a statistical measure of inequality. Is a statistical measure of inequality based on data. You know, there are different measures of inequality. For example, there are quintile ratio होइगला, decile ratio होइगला, Palmer ratio होइगला, आपनकर Lorentz curve होइगला, Kuznets curve होइगला, and your this is Gini coefficient. All these are different measures of inequality. So Gini coefficient is a statistical measure of inequality based on data. So what does Gini coefficient do? Gini coefficient measures income inequality in a population. True statement, right statement. A value of Gini coefficient, a value of Gini coefficient closer to 0 indicates perfect inequality. This is a wrong statement. It's a wrong statement. Why? Because a value closer to 0 indicates what? Perfect equality. Perfect equality, and a value closer to 1 indicates perfect inequality. So 2 and 3 are false, whereas 1 is only 1. Answer is only 1. First statement is correct. Eta ko मन रखिए, a value of Gini coefficient closer to 0 indicates what? Perfect equality, not perfect inequality. And a value of Gini coefficient closer to 1 indicates perfect inequality. Okay. Now, the term Palmer ratio refers to which of the following? The term Palmer ratio is again a measure of inequality. Palmer ratio is again a measure of inequality. So the term Palmer ratio refers to which of the following? Ratio between savings and investment in an economy, wrong. Ratio of the richest 10% income share to poorest 40% income share. The correct option is B. Palmer ratio is a measure of inequality, which is the ratio of the richest 10% income share to the poorest 40% income share. Hello. तमाने economy रे जो top 10% population अच्छी 10% population countries रो केते income से मान को जाऊँची आ bottom रे जो 40% population अच्छी कोटे country रो केते percent income से मान को जाऊँची तार ratio टा होची कौन Palmer ratio. Okay. Now, in the parlance of economy or commerce, what is gilt-edged market? What is gilt-edged market? In the parlance of economy or commerce, what is gilt-edged market? Gilt-edged market means what? Gilt-edged market. Gilt-edged market means market of safe securities. The correct option is C. Gilt-edged market means market of safe securities. Market of safe securities. देखो गिल्ट एज्ड सिक्योरिटीज आपण सुनिथिबे गिल्ट एज सिक्योरिटीज कहा कुआ जाय गिल्ट एज सिक्योरिटी मींस सेफ सिक्योरिटीज ता माने जो सिक्योरिटीज रे आपण जदी पैसा इन्वेस्ट करिवे ताले आपण को पैसा पाखा पाखी बुडीवार चांस 0%. गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज आर ऑफन कॉल्ड एज gilt edged securities. Why? because government securities are considered highly safe investment options. जदि आप गवर्नमेंट सिक्यूरीटीज रे आपण इन्वेस्ट करछन आपण पैसा ताहले आपण पैसा बुडीवार चांस पैसा बुडीवार रिस्क केते 0% रिस्क सेति पई गवर्नमेंट सिक्यूरीटीज आर ऑफन कॉल्ड एज गिल्ड एज सिक्यूरिटीज हला मीनिंग सेफ सिक्यूरिटीज. द करेक्ट ऑप्शन इज market of safe securities. Next question, which of the following best explains the cascading effect of taxation? Which of the following best explains the cascading effect of taxation? So cascading effect जानी थी cascading effect कौन देखो तो कौन ऑप्शंस अच्छी. When tax imposition leads to a disproportionate increase in prices by an extent more than the rise in tax. When tax imposition leads to a disproportionate decrease in prices by an extent more than the rise in tax, and tax imposition leads to disproportionate decrease in imports exports. The correct option is A, only one. The correct option is A, only one. Cascading effect of taxation means when tax imposition leads to a disproportionate increase in prices by an extent more than the rise in tax. देखो तो cascading effect of taxation माने कौन. Cascading effect of taxation simply means tax on tax and double taxation. Tax on tax and double taxation both refers to cascading effect of taxes. Both lead to cascading effect of taxes. इटा को ही cascading effect of taxes कहा जाए. And cascading effect of taxes one of the most important reason for which GST was introduced. GST को आनिबा पछरे cascading effect was one of the most important reason. मतलब prior to GST, cascading effect, due to cascading effect of taxes, the final price of a product used to be very high for the consumer. So, cascading effect of taxes means tax on tax and double taxation. Both constitute what? Cascading effect of taxes. Next question. What is the primary difference between payment bank and small finance bank? Payment bank and small finance bank. Payment banks can accept demand deposits but cannot issue loans. Small finance banks can only serve urban customers. Payment banks can lend money, small finance banks cannot, and payment banks charge higher interest rates. The correct option, the payment banks can accept demand deposits but cannot issue loans. Payment banks can accept demand deposits but cannot issue loans. The correct option is A. Payment bank on demand deposit to accept kari paribo kintu kon se prakar loan dei paribo nahi. Whereas small finance banks they can accept demand deposits, they can also accept time deposits, and they can also what? Issue loans. Hello, the correct option is A. Next, which of the following are included in the capital budget of the government of India? Budget under रे भी दीटा account अच्छी गुटे आपण जानि थिबे revenue account गुटे होची capital account and capital account, revenue budget or capital budget. So which of the following are included in the capital budget of the government of India? Capital budget of government of India, capital budget रे कोन include हेकी अछि देखंतु. Expenditure on acquisition of assets like roads, buildings, machinery, etc. Loans received from foreign governments, loans and advances granted to states and union territories. Out of this, which are correct? So capital budget of the government of India ko kon include heki. Expenditure on acquisition of assets. Expenditure on acquisition of assets like roads, buildings, machinery, etc. Yes, it includes a part of what? Capital budget. Expenditure on acquisition of assets like roads, buildings, machinery is a part of capital budget. Loans received from foreign government is also a part of what? Capital budget. And loans and advances granted to states and union territories. Loans and advances granted to states and union territories is also a part of what? Capital budget. So option is D. 1, 2 and 3 all are correct. Okay. Now next question is, which of the following best describes the term import cover? Import cover. What do you mean by import cover? See, import cover mane kon? It is the ratio of value of imports. It is the ratio of value of imports to the GDP, gross domestic product of a country. Wrong. It is the total value of imports of a country in a year. It's again wrong. It is the ratio between the value of exports and that of imports between two countries. Not right. And option D, it is the number of months of imports. It is the number of months of imports that could be paid for by a country's international reserves. by country international reserves? The correct option is D. The correct option is D. Import cover. The correct option is D. Import cover means it is the number of months of imports that could be paid for by a country's international reserves. Minimum, देखो आप जानिथिबे जदि आपण इकोनॉमिक्स पढिछन त जानिथिबे व्हाट डू मीन बाय बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट क्राइसिस. तो गोटे कंट्री केतोळे बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट क्राइसिस केतोळे व्हेन अ कंट्री सफर्स फ्रॉम बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट क्राइसिस जेतोळे ता पाखरे व्हेन अ कंट्री डजंट हैव इनफ फॉरेक्स रिजर्व्स when a country doesn't have enough forex reserves to cover for imports for 3 months. जदि 3 मासर इंपोर्ट करबा पई 3 मासर इंपोर्ट पई जदि गोटे कंट्री पाखरे सफिशिएंट फॉरेक्स रिजर्व्स नाही, then that country might suffer from balance of payment crisis. केवल गोटे कंडीशन नाही आ गोटे कंडीशन अछि जोटा हम परे बुझिबा, बट दिस इज वन ऑफ द कंडीशन. हला इंपोर्ट कवर माने आपन पाखरे जो रिजर्व्स अछि फॉरेक्स रिजर्व्स अछि से फॉरेक्स रिजर्व्स को यूज करिकी आपण केते मास पर्यंत इंपोर्ट करि परिबे. वर्तमान इंडिया पाखरे जेति की फॉरेक्स रिजर्व्स अछि से फॉरेक्स रिजर्व्स को यूज करिकी इंडिया पाखापाखि इंपोर्ट करि परिबो फॉर नियर अबाउट 12 मंथ्स 11 टू 12 मंथ 12 मास पर्यंत इंपोर्ट करि परिबो जेति की फॉरेक्स रिजर्व्स इंडिया पाखरे वर्तमान अछि. किंतु जो कंट्री पाखरे 3 मास जाय इंपोर्ट करिवा जेते फॉरेन फॉरेक्स रिजर्व्स नाही, then that country might suffer from what? balance of payment BOP crisis. So it is the number of months of import that could be paid for by a country's international reserves. Now next question, consider the following statements. Capital adequacy ratio is the amount that banks have to maintain in the form of their own funds to offset any loss that banks incur if the account holders fail to repay dues. Capital adequacy ratio, it's a highly technical concept. Capital adequacy ratio, what a technical concept, it will take some time to understand, but for the time being simply apan janantu je this first statement is correct statement. Capital adequacy ratio is the amount that banks have to maintain in the form of their own funds to offset any loss that banks incur if the account holders fail to repay their dues. Hello? And the first statement is correct, whereas the second statement, capital adequacy ratio is decided by each individual bank. It's a wrong statement. It is not. Capital adequacy ratio is not decided by individual banks. It is decided by the country's central bank, country's monetary authority. It is decided. The capital adequacy ratio is decided by a country's monetary authority. For example, in case of India, it is RBI which will decide the capital adequacy ratio under Basel III norms. Basel III norms under इंस्ट्रक्शन दिया है जे गोटे कंट्री को कैपिटल एडिक्वेसी रेशियो केते परसेंट मेंटेन करिया पड़िबो. अंडर बेसल 3 नॉर्म्स a country's bank should maintain capital adequacy ratio at 8%, whereas RBI has increased it to 9%. तो RBI decide करे ना कि individual banks. So the correct option is A, only one. Correct option is A, only one. Next question, which of the following best describes the term, already he said. Okay. Next question, which one of the following statements correctly describes the meaning of legal tender money? Legal tender money, what do you mean by legal tender? See, the first option, the money which is tendered in court of law to defray the fees of legal cases. Wrong. The money, second option, the money which a creditor is under compulsion to accept in settlement of his claims. Okay, now what do you mean by this? B, option B is the correct option. The money which a creditor is under compulsion to accept in settlement of his claims. And yeah, माने कौन, what do you mean legal tender? देखो तो legal tender माने कौन, देखो suppose आपण मार्केट गले, मार्केट रो किछि किनिले, किछि प्रोडक्ट्स, किछि गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज किनिले, किंबा आपण लोन नै चंदी काठो, लोन नै कि आपण रीपे करिवा को चाहउचंती. प्रथम केस देखो, जदि आपण मार्केट रो किछि गुड्स किनिचंती ताहले आपण को पेमेंट भी करिया को पड़िबो. जदि आपण पेमेंट गोल्ड रे करूचंती ताहले सेलर पेमेंट एक्सेप्ट करि भी पारे न भी करि पारे. ता माने से कहि पारे जे मु गोल्ड रे पेमेंट एक्सेप्ट करिबिनी, प्लीज मते रुपी रे पेमेंट करंतु. से गोल्ड को मना कर दे पारे. जदि आपण गोल्ड रे पेमेंट करछन, आपण सिल्वर रे पेमेंट करिवे, अगेन से सेलर आउथरे मना कर दे पारे. आपण सपोज चेक दउचंती से मना कर दे पारे. किंतु आपण जदि रुपी रे पेमेंट करूचंती seller मना करि परिबो नाही. Why? Because rupee has been declared as legal tender by the government of India. तो जेहेतु जेहेतु रुपी को लीगल टेंडर बोली डिक्लेयर कर दिया जाइछि ताहले आपण प्रोडक्ट आपण मार्केट रे जहां भी किणंतु आपण जदि रुपी रे पेमेंट करूचंती ताहले सेलर ताकू एक्सेप्ट करबा को बाध्य. जदि से एक्सेप्ट करूनी मना करूछि नाही मु रुपी रे पेमेंट एक्सेप्ट करिबिनी मते गोल्ड पेमेंट करो कि सिल्वर रे पेमेंट करो देन दैट बिकम्स अ पनिशेबल ऑफेंस. एटा कोन पनिशेबल ऑफेंस हे जाय बिकॉज़ रुपी होछि लीगल टेंडर तामे रुपी रे जदि आपण जोठी जहां भी पेमेंट कर जेमिति पेमेंट करूचंती दैट सेलर मस्ट एक्सेप्ट द पेमेंट. Okay, because why? Rupee is a what? Legal tender. Rupee is a legal tender. Hello. Similarly, setipai gold is a legal tender in India. No, gold is not legal tender. Silver, no, it's not a legal tender. Check legal tender. No, check रे जदि आपण पेमेंट करूचनी ताले गोटे सेलर मना भी कर दे पारे ताले इट्स नॉट अ क्रिमिनल ऑफेंस. इट्स नॉट एन ऑफेंस, लीगल ऑफेंस. किंतु रुपी रे पेमेंट करूचंती जदि गोटे सेलर मना कर दोउची ताले कोन इट्स अ पनिशेबल ऑफेंस. हेलो. Similarly, dollar is legal tender in America but not a legal tender in India. तो आपण सपोज इंडियन मार्केट को इंडिया रे गोटे मार्केट जाइछि आपण गोटे गुड्स किनुचंती आप डॉलर रे पेमेंट करूचंती से मना कर दे परियो. Why? Because dollar is not a legal tender in India. Dollar is legal tender in America. Fine. So the correct option is B. Now next, which among the following are not part of capital market? Which among the following are not part of the capital market? Capital market रो पार्ट कोडा न है देखो तो debt instruments like bonds and debentures. Bonds and debentures, yes, they are part of capital market because they are long term instruments, financial instruments. Short term भी अच्छी, short term bonds भी अच्छी, long term bonds भी अच्छी. But generally debt instruments like bonds and debentures, they are part of capital market. And stock exchanges and equity shares, yes, they are also part of capital market. Money market instruments like treasury bills and commercial papers. This option, the correct option is C. The correct option is C. Money market instruments like treasury bills and commercial bills, they are not part of capital market. Why? Because they are short term financial instruments which are bought and sold in the money market. So the correct option is C. Mutual funds and venture capitalist fund, they are also part of capital market. Okay. Now next question. What is the primary rationale behind the introduction of inflation indexed bonds? What is the primary rationale behind the introduction of inflation indexed bonds? Bonds माने आपण मन जानि थिबे bonds माने simply bonds means what bonds are debt instruments. Debt instruments that means जदि आपण गवर्नमेंट रो बॉन्ड किनुचंती किबा गोटे कंपनी रो बॉन्ड किनुचंती ता माने आपण से कंपनी को पैसा धार रे दोचंती ता माने आपण से कंपनी को पैसा लेंड करूचंती आ किबा आपण कहि परिबे से कंपनी आपण तो बोरो करूची हला. सो सेति में कुहा जाय bonds are what? Bonds are debt instruments. DEBT, debt instruments, whereas shares are equity instruments or ownership instruments. Now what is the primary rationale behind the introduction of inflation indexed bonds? देखंतु केते प्रकार bonds अछि आपनकर inflation indexed bonds अछि. You have plain vanilla bonds अछि. You have junk bonds, you have angel bonds, you have inflation indexed bonds. There are different types of bonds हैला. तो inflation indexed bonds को इशू करिया पछरे what is the objective कोन objective देखिबा. See, to provide higher returns than fixed income bonds. Fixed income bonds को कहा जाए plain vanilla bonds. चलो fixed income bonds को कहा जाए plain vanilla bonds. So to provide higher returns than fixed income bonds, no, wrong. To protect investors from inflation risk by adjusting returns with inflation rate. Yes, this is the correct option. Option B is the correct option. Option B is the correct option. To protect investors from inflation risk by adjusting returns with inflation rate. Hello? And other two are wrong. False. Next question. With reference to the Phillips curve, which of the following statements is correct? With reference to Phillips curve, which of the following statements are correct? See, Phillips curve shows an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment in the short run. It proves that high inflation always leads to low unemployment in the long run. It explains only the impact of fiscal policy, not monetary policy, and it is unrelated to business cycle. The correct option is A. It shows an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment in the short run. Okay. So Phillips curve shows an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment in the short run. Phillips curve shape केमित था? It's a rectangular hyperbola. The shape is rectangular hyperbola. So Phillips curve कौन show करूची? शो करूची इनवर्स रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन इन्फ्लेशन एंड अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट. The next question, which of the following can be considered as examples of automatic stabilizers in an economy? Automatic stabilizers in an economy. Which of the following can be considered as examples of automatic stabilizers in an economy? Automatic stabilizers माने कौन देखो. Automatic stabilizers देखो, suppose आपन जानी थी भाई high rate of inflation ideal for Indian economy. Indian economy पाई ideal rate of inflation होउची केते 4%. Ideal rate of inflation is 4%. 4 plus minus 2 is the range of inflation targeting in India. 4% होची ideal rate of inflation for Indian economy. If the rate of inflation is, suppose if the rate of inflation is keeps on increasing, if the rate of inflation गोटे economy rate of inflation बढ़ी जाए, then it might be problematic. Then it will affect the economy negatively. Economy को negatively affect करिवो if the rate of inflation is too high. So बर्तमान इन्फ्लेशन को कंट्रोल करिवार जॉब कहार. इन्फ्लेशन को कंट्रोल करिवार जॉब होची रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होची प्राइमरली द रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ कंट्रोलिंग इन्फ्लेशन लाइज विथ आरबीआई, द मॉनेटरी अथॉरिटी ऑफ इंडिया. आरबीआई चेष्टा करिवो इन्फ्लेशन रेट ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन को केमिति कंट्रोल करा जाओ. तो वेरियस स्टेप्स नबो. रेपो रेट को इंक्रीज करिवो, सीआरआर को इंक्रीज कर दे पारे, एसएलआर को टिके इंक्रीज कर दे पारे, रेपो रेट को इंक्रीज कर दे पारे. Similarly, okay, there are some qualitative monetary policy tools used by RBI to control the rate of inflation. तो ये automatic stabilizers माने होची जदि inflation rate of inflation बड़ी चलची ताले RBI as well as government, RBI या government किछि न करिकी कौन inflation को control करा जाई परिवो की. जदि आरबीआई इन्फ्लेशन को कंट्रोल करने को चाहूँगी ताहले से रेपो रेट को होते इंक्रीज कर दे पारिबो. किंतु एटी आरबीआई किछि एक्शन नौची, किंतु आरबीआई कौन किछि एक्शन न नै कि रेट ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन को कंट्रोल करा जाई पारिबो कि. आरबीआई आ गवर्नमेंट किछि एक्शन न नै कि ग्रोथ को प्रमोट करा जाई पारिबो कि. जदि यस, देन जो द फैक्टर्स व्हिच आर रेस्पॉन्सिबल for controlling the rate of inflation as well as promoting the rate of growth without the intervention of RBI as well as the government, those factors are called as what? Automatic stabilizers. Automatic stabilizers तांको ही कुआ जाए, सही factors मानन कुआ जाए कौन? Automatic stabilizers. So what are the automatics? देखो तो देखिवा what are the automatic stabilizers. First of all, automatic stabilizers, progressive taxation. The progressive taxation, does it act like an automatic stabilizer? Yes. Progressive taxation does act like an automatic stabilizer. Unemployment insurance, yes, it also does act like an automatic stabilizer. Minimum support price for crops, no. Public distribution support system, no. The correct option is 1 and 2. So correct option is 1 and 2. So A is your right option. A is your right option. Progressive taxation माने जानि थिबे आपण माने. If progressive taxation means जदि लोक मान को इनकम बढ़ी चलची ताले टैक्स रेट भी बढ़ी जीवो. बुझि पारले. Along with increasing in income, tax rates also keeps on increasing. That is your progressive taxation. For example, suppose Indian economy बहुत rapidly grow करूची. Indian economy rapidly grow करूची, तो समस्ते माने कोन समस्ते जॉब करूचंती, समस्ते इनकम करूचंती. तो इनकम धीरे धीरे कोन समस्त इनकम लोक हाथ को पैसा आसुची, तो लोक माने डिमांड करूचंती. लोक माने डिमांड एक्चुअली इकोनॉमी रे बढ़ुची. लोक माने जेतु सब लोक प्राय लोक जॉब करूचंती इकोनॉमी रे, तो इनकम भी आसुची, तो इकोनॉमी रे डिमांड भी बढ़ुची. तो डिमांड बढ़िबा जगु कोन होउची? रेट ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन. डिमांड बढ़िबा जगु रेट ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन भी बढ़ी चलची. Because the supply of goods and services cannot be increased corresponding to increase in demand. हेलो, डिमांड जो रेट रे इंक्रीज करूची से रेट रे हम सप्लाई को इंक्रीज करै परिबानी सेति पई कोन हुए? जब डिमांड बढ़ी जाए प्राइसेस भी बढ़ी जाए आरंभ हुए, लीडिंग टू इन्फ्लेशन. तो जदि कोन होउची? इंडियन इकोनॉमी रैपिडली ग्रो करूची, तो ग्रो करबा जगु डिमांड बढ़ुची, डिमांड बढ़िबा जगु इन्फ्लेशन होउची इकोनॉमी रे. किंतु आपण मन जानिथिबा दरकार जे इकोनॉमी रैपिडली ग्रो करूची, तो रैपिडली ग्रो करबा जगु कोन? लोक मानकर इनकम भी धीरे धीरे बढ़ी चलची. तो जेहेतु जिमिति तो इनकम बढ़िबा जगु कोन हुए? प्रत्येक लोक इनकम बढ़िबा सहित हायर टैक्स ब्रैकेट को पळे आसे. हायर टैक्स ब्रैकेट को आसला माने वर्तमान तार इनकम वर्तमान ताकू बेसी टैक्स दबाकू पड़ियो गवर्नमेंट को. कहीं ना वर्तमान दैट पर्सन इज नाउ comes under higher tax bracket. यदि से higher tax bracket को आसुची सेति ताको वर्तमान बेसी टैक्स देबा पड़ियो गवर्नमेंट को तो बेसी टैक्स देबा जो कोन हबो बेसी टैक्स देबा जो तार डिस्पोजेबल इनकम टा कमिबो डिस्पोजेबल इनकम कमिया जो हुए तो डिमांड भी कमी पारे तो डिमांड कमिया जो कोन इन्फ्लेशन विल बी ऑटोमेटिकली कंट्रोल्ड so progressive taxation does act like an automatic stabilizers unemployment insurance will also act like an automatic stabilizer so the correct option is this now next question the term crowding out in an economy refers to what the term crowding out in an economy refers to what the term crowding out refers to देखो तो चारटा ऑप्शन अछि first option is a situation where excessive private investment reduces public sector investment second a situation where higher government borrowing leads to reduced private sector investment third reduction in government expenditure due to fiscal consolidation fourth the tendency of monopolies to eliminate competition from the market the correct option is B a situation where higher government borrowing leads to reduced private sector investment देखो जेतेबेले गवर्नमेंट बेसी रु बेसी मार्केट टू बोरो करबा आरंभ करे यदि गवर्नमेंट बोरो करूची माने कोन होची दैट मींस नाउ बैंक्स हैव शॉर्टेज ऑफ फंड्स गवर्नमेंट बोरो करी चलची बेसी रु बेसी टंका बोरो करूची बैंक्स मानंटू बोरो करबा जो कोन होची बैंक्स मानन पाखरे वर्तमान सप्लाई कमी जाईची तो सप्लाई कमिया जो बैंक्स माने कोन करियो सप्लाई जेतु कमी जाईची सिंस डिमांड इज मोर देन सप्लाई द रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट विल कीप ऑन इंक्रीजिंग रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट वर्तमान बढ़िबा आरंभ हो तो रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट बढ़िले कोन प्राइवेट सेक्टर इन्वेस्टर्स माने वर्तमान आउ लोन नहीं कि इन्वेस्ट करबा को चाहिबे नाही काहेकि ना रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट बढ़ी जाई छै इकोनॉमी रे तो सेति पई गवर्नमेंट बेसी बोरो करबा जोगु कोन होउची इकोनॉमी रे रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट बढ़ुची और रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट बढ़िबा जोगु कोन होउची प्राइवेट सेक्टर इन्वेस्टर्स माने लोन नहु नांती वो कोन पई बिकॉज़ द रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट इज टू हाई दैट इज सिंपली कॉल्ड एज क्राउडिंग आउट ताको ही कहवा जाय कोन क्राउडिंग आउट so higher government borrowing leads to reduced private sector investment this is simply called as what crowding out effect next question is with reference to the exchange rate system in India consider the following statements India follows a fully free floating exchange rate system wrong statement the first statement is wrong statement India doesn't follow a fully free floating exchange rate system India follows dirty float exchange rate system or you can say managed float exchange rate system India follows dirty float exchange rate system or you can say managed float exchange rate system next option is the Reserve Bank of India intervenes in the forex market to curb excessive volatility yes the second statement is correct statement okay the second statement is correct statement जेतेबेले भी फॉरेक्स मार्केट रे वोलेटिलिटी देखिया को मिले immediately RBI intervene करे हेलो so to curb the excessive volatility third statement is an appreciating rupee makes Indian exports more competitive it's wrong statement an appreciating rupee makes Indian exports what less competitive बुझी पड़ले so जब rupee appreciation माने बुझी पड़थु rupee appreciation means the value of rupee actually increases against a foreign currency so the correct option is 2 so that is B your 2 only first statement is wrong and third statement is wrong because India follows dirty float or managed float exchange rate system and third statement an appreciating rupee makes Indian exports less competitive not more competitive a depreciating rupee makes Indian exports more competitive next question which of the following will be counted in India's GDP at market prices now see here which of the following will be counted in India's GDP at market prices salary GDP means what is GDP simply means the value of all final goods and services produced in an economy in an accounting year तो गोटे कंट्री भितर जहाँ भी गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज प्रोड्यूस होउची तार वैल्यू को कहा जाए कोन जीडीपी so GDP is the value of all final goods and services produced in an economy in an accounting year so which of the following will be counted in India's GDP at market prices the first option is salary paid to Indian workers in Saudi Arabia. Salary paid to Indian workers in Saudi Arabia. साउदी रे जो साउदी अरेबिया रे जो इंडियंस माने काम करचंती दैट इज नॉट पार्ट ऑफ इंडियन इकोनॉमिक इंडियाज इकोनॉमिक टेरिटरी साउदी अरेबिया से माने साउदी अरेबिया रे काम करचंती तो साउदी अरेबिया रे काम करी से माने जहां भी इनकम अर्न करचंती दैट विल नॉट बी अ पार्ट ऑफ इंडियाज जीडीपी बिकॉज जीडीपी इज द वैल्यू ऑफ फाइनल गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज प्रोड्यूस्ड इन एन इकोनॉमी तो इंडियन इकोनॉमी भितर जहाँ जहाँ गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज प्रोड्यूस होउची तार वैल्यू को आमे कहू कोन तार टोटल वैल्यू को आमे कहू जीडीपी. So first statement is wrong. Second statement, profits earned by Indian company operating in Singapore. गोटे इंडियन कंपनी अच्छी जोटा कि सिंगापुर रे ऑपरेट करूची और सिंगापुर रे ऑपरेट करी किसी प्रॉफिट अर्न करूची जदियो सेटा इंडियन कंपनी जदियो सेटा इंडियन कंपनी से कंपनी जहाँ भी प्रॉफिट अर्न करूची इट विल नॉट बी पार्ट ऑफ इंडियाज जीडीपी बिकॉज इट इज ऑपरेटिंग इन सिंगापुर आउटसाइड द कंट्रीज इकोनॉमिक टेरिटरी आउटसाइड इंडियाज इकोनॉमिक टेरिटरी. हेलो so second statement is also wrong. Third statement, agricultural output produced within India. Yes, agricultural output, this is right statement. India भितर जो agricultural output produce करा होची तार value को हमें India GDP रे calculate करिबा measure को calculate add करिबा. Value of services produced by foreign firms within India. Again yes, correct statement. तो India रे जहाँ भी foreign firms अच्छंती जेहेतु से इंडिया रो इकोनॉमिक टेरिटरी भितर रही कि से प्रोड्यूस करूचंती तो से जहाँ भी प्रोड्यूस करूचन तार वैल्यू को हमें जीडीपी रे काउंट करिबा. So which of the following will be counted in India's GDP? The correct statement is 3 and 4 only. The option is A. The option is A, 3 and 4. 1 and 2 are wrong options. Next statement, next question. Consider the following with respect to special drawing rights. Special drawing rights. Special drawing rights. The first option is they are an international reserve asset created by the IMF. They are an international reserve asset created by the IMF. Yes, true, right statement. Their value is based on a basket of currencies including US dollar, euro, yen, pound sterling and Chinese yuan. Again, correct statement. SDRs can be used as a currency in international trade directly between countries. Wrong statement. The third statement is wrong statement, whereas the first two statements are correct statement. SDR, special drawing rights, they are an international reserve assets created by the IMF. IMF ही create करछि. देखो तो अपन जानिया को पड़िबो जे SDRs actually they are not currency. SDR currency नुहे. काहे currency नुहे काहे ना आपण SDR कोन सी कंट्री SDR को यूज करी कि परस्पर सहित ट्रेड करि परिबोनी डायरेक्टली बुझ पारले इनडायरेक्टली करी हबो किंतु तार ताको बुझिवा को पड़िबो केमिति करा जाय बुझ पछन बट आपण जानिया को पड़िबो SDR इज नॉट अ करेंसी SDR को यूज करके कौन सी कंट्री डायरेक्टली आ गोटे कंट्री सहित ट्रेड करि परिबो नहीं व्हाई बिकॉज़ SDR इज नॉट अ करेंसी SDR इज अ बास्केट ऑफ करेंसीज इन फैक्ट SDR इज अ यूनिट ऑफ अकाउंट फॉर IMF is simply a unit of account for IMF but it is not a currency. SDR is not a currency. SDR is a basket of currencies. चलो तो पांचटा इंटरनेशनल करेंसीज अच्छी पांचटा इंटरनेशनल करेंसीज रो वैल्यू को नहीं कि एक्चुअली SDR रो वैल्यू को कैलकुलेट करा जाए बुझ पाछन. So it's an international reserve asset created by the IMF and first statement is right. Their value is based on a basket of currencies including US dollar, euro, yen, pound, Chinese yuan, correct. And SDRs can be used as a currency in international trade directly between countries. This is wrong statement. SDRs cannot be used as a currency in international trade directly between countries. Hello? No, so correct option is 1 and 2 only. 1 and 2. A is the correct option. Okay. Next question. Which of the following statements about the Bahuda port project in Odisha are correct? Which of the following statements about the Bahuda port project in Odisha are correct? The first is the project is estimated to cost 21,500 crores. Yes, it's right. And the second is it aims to enhance Odisha's maritime infrastructure. Again, right. This is correct statement. Third statement is the project is part of the Samudra Se Samriddhi initiative. It's a wrong statement. Okay, it's a wrong statement. Only 1 and 2 are correct. Only 1 and 2 are correct. देखो the project is part of samudra se is not, oh sorry, all three are correct. I'm extremely sorry, all three are correct. The project is estimated to cost 21,500 crore. It aims to enhance Odisha's maritime infrastructure. It's also correct. The project is part of the Samudra Se Samriddhi initiative. Again, this is also correct. Okay, also correct. Now next question. The Samruddha Sahar scheme approved by the Odisha State Cabinet focuses on what? Focuses on, the first statement is promoting rural development, advancing planned urban and regional development, enhancing agricultural productivity, strengthening digital infrastructure. The correct option is B, advancing planned urban and regional development. Okay, so next question. The Gopabandhu Jan Arogya Yojana in Odisha focuses on what? Jan Arogya Yojana. The Gopabandhu Jan Arogya Yojana in Odisha focuses on providing health care coverage to families. Providing health care coverage to families. The correct option is A, providing health care coverage to families. Next question. The green bond issued by India, aims to finance projects related to what? The green bond issued by India aims to finance projects related to, the correct option is A, environmental sustainability and climate change mitigation. जो ग्रीन बॉन्ड्स गुड़ा गवर्नमेंट इश्यू करूची से कौन पे इश्यू करूची? ग्रीन बॉन्ड इश्यू करिकी गवर्नमेंट जहाँ भी पैसा कलेक्ट करूची से पैसा को यूज करूची फॉर व्हाट? एनवायरमेंटल सस्टेनेबिलिटी पाई और क्लाइमेट चेंज मिटिगेशन पाई से पैसा को यूज करा जाए. ओके ओके, नाउ थैंक यू. सो दीज वर द क्वेश्चंस. ये सब क्वेश्चंस थिला जोटा कि हम डिस्कस करले. These are some of the most expected questions for the upcoming prelims exam, and thank you all. Thank you for this session.